Ladies and gentlemen, visionaries and rebels, welcome to Disrupt. This is a day that I've been looking forward to for nearly 8 years. Every once in a while, a revolutionary idea comes along that changes everything. I've been fortunate enough to work on a few of these. In 1984, I introduced the Macintosh. It didn't just change Apple, it changed the whole computer industry. In 2001, I introduced the first iPod. It didn't just change the way we all listen to music, it changed the entire music industry. In 2007, I introduced the iPhone. This magical device changed the way that we communicate with each other, and in doing so has revolutionized customer experience. Disrupt, my friends, is our iPhone moment. It's the intersection of audacity and brilliance. It's where ideas collide, ignite, and reshape reality. It's the people who are crazy enough to think they can change the world are the ones who do. Well, my friends, you're those crazy ones. Embrace the unconventional, challenge the norms, let your imagination run wild, because it's the misfits and the rebels who move humanity forward. This is why we are here at Disrupt. Today, we are going to reinvent customer experience. And now, it's my honor to introduce a very good friend of mine. Please give a thunderous welcome to our host for Disrupt, Stu Dorman. Stu, take the stage, my friend, and let the disruption begin.
Hola. Thank you very much for joining us. It's amazing to see such a big crowd here at Disrupt today. My name's Stu Dorman. I'm going to kick off Disrupt for us today, and I'm so excited to be here for our 12th Disrupt conference and the 5th that we've run here in Madrid. And I promise you, I really thank you for your time for joining us today. I promise you it's going to be a good use of your time, both those of you that are here and the hundreds of people that are joining us remotely as well, because we've got a brilliant agenda lined up for you today. We've got some great content from industry experts across the industry. We've got lots of our customers speaking here today, and you're going to hear from lots of our experts, both within Sabio, but also from our friends across the industry, all of whom are going to share their thoughts and ideas on how we can deliver brilliant customer experiences. So, let's get started. So, first of all, what an honor it was to have Steve Jobs open up the conference for us today. I used this image of Steve Jobs to kick off the very first Disrupt conference that we ran in London 8 years ago. And who'd have thought we could summon the power of AI to bring Steve back to life, to open up our conference today? It's amazing how this technology is developing. Now, the reason I used this image at our first Disrupt 8 years ago was that it landed on the 10th anniversary of the launch of the iPhone. And at that point, these smartphone devices had reached full penetration across the UK and lots of European markets. Pretty much every adult in the country was using one of these devices at the time. And who would have thought, the impact that they would have on society? I'm not sure even Steve Jobs himself would have realized how much of a profound impact they would have had on the way that we all communicate with each other and the way that we engage with organizations and access customer experiences. So nobody really saw the full potential of this device when it was launched, looking forward 10 years. So what I thought I'd do today was try and think forward over the next 10 years and look at some of the emerging technologies that we're seeing coming out today and think about how they may impact society over the coming decade in the way that the iPhone did when it was first launched. Now, this is a notoriously difficult thing to do. Making predictions about technology, even over a few years, is difficult, let alone over a 10-year period. But I'm going to give it a bit of a go. Bill Gates famously once said that we often overestimate the impact of technology over a 2-year period, but underestimate its impact over a 10-year period. I would argue we're seeing this a lot with the excitement around AI at the moment, and we're going to be talking about that quite a lot today. So how do we cut through all of the excitement and the hype around technology to look at what's emerging at the moment and try and make some predictions around how it will impact us? This is more difficult now than it ever has been. We're in an era of unprecedented change and innovation. We stand on the cusp of multiple waves of technological disruption, with different technologies converging together to really profoundly impact society. We think about things like infinite computing through the cloud. We think about mass automation through robotics and artificial intelligence. We think about the digitization of the physical world through the Internet of Things. We think about biotechnology. All of these things are coming together to create realities that simply weren't even imaginable just a few years ago. So, in order to grasp the scale and the potential of technology, we need to change our mindsets a bit. We need to start thinking like a disruptor. And there are a few key attributes of disruptive thinking that I'd like to share with you today. The first is a recognition that the only constant that we have now in today's world is change, and that the rate of change is increasing all of the time. So we need to bear that in mind. The second thing that we need to think about is that every single product and every single service and every business model will be disrupted at some point. So you either have to think about how you disrupt yourself, or somebody else will come along and do that for you. The third thing that we need to think about is that we are in a period of exponential growth when it comes to technology. And we humans find it very difficult to grasp this concept of exponential growth. And by exponential growth, typically what I mean is the doubling of something every year or two. So I'm going to give you a quick thought experiment right now that hopefully helps you understand this concept of exponential growth. And I want you all to imagine you've got a huge, great piece of paper, okay? And you're going to fold that piece of paper in half, so that gives you your first doubling, okay? And then you're going to fold it in half again, so you've got another doubling there. And gradually that piece of paper gets thicker and thicker. I want you to think about how many times you need to fold that piece of paper in half so that its thickness is so great that it reaches all the way to the moon. Does anyone want to shout out any answers here? No? Any questions? A few people shaking their heads, I can see. Okay, I'm going to tell you the answer in the interest of time. And it was very surprising when I first saw it. The answer is 42 times. 42 folds is what you need. So just to think about this, by the time you've got to your 10th fold, you're about 1 centimetre thick, and then you keep doubling and doubling. And this is what I call the deceptive growth phase. It's the doubling of very small numbers where you don't really notice much of a difference. And then all of a sudden, that thickness starts getting greater and greater, and we get into this explosive growth phase, this disruptive growth phase. And that's the nature of exponential growth. Now, we've famously been seeing this in the world of technology and computing now for many, many years. Gordon Moore famously created Moore's Law, which spotted this doubling of microprocessors on a chip. But actually, this trend has been going on for many, many years now. In fact, you can trace it back to the beginning of the last century with the first mechanical computers. And ever since then, every 18 months or so, we've seen this doubling of compute power. Now, this trend is actually what's been powering us right the way through society as we know it today. And if you think back over the last sort of 15 years or so, it's powered us through what we call, the smartphone revolution that's really impacted society. And in fact, if you think about the iPhones and the devices that we have in our pockets today, you've only really got to go back as far as about the middle of the 2005, 2006, when the world's most powerful supercomputer had the equivalent processing power of these devices that we carry in our pockets today. It's incredible, this growth that we're seeing. And this is going to be the trend that continues to power us forward over the coming decades into the artificial intelligence era. But I want you to bear this in mind, this concept of exponential growth, as we think about some of the technologies that are going to be impacting us as the years progress. We have to go back, though, to sort of the early part of that graph, back to the 1950s and the 1940s, to look at where the first idea of artificial intelligence came from. It came from a chap called Alan Turing, who was a very famous British scientist. And he was the person that first conceived of this idea of machines that could think for themselves, and that subsequently became known as artificial intelligence. Now, Alan Turing created this thought experiment, which he called the imitation game, which is, if you've seen the film about Alan Turing, that was what the film was named after. It was subsequently renamed as the Turing test. And the idea behind this test was that there will be a point in time, Alan Turing imagined, where it will be indistinguishable for a human to tell whether they are communicating with another human or with a machine. And Alan Turing's prediction was that we would reach that by the end of the last century. Now, clearly, that didn't happen. And in fact, artificial intelligence has had lots of, false starts over that period. People refer to them as the AI winters, which is where the hopes around AI suddenly get dashed and, the funding gets cut back. And there's no doubt that we're in a very, big hype curve around AI at the moment. But what the current predictions are that it will be the next 5 years, it will be 2029, when computers get to the point where they will pass the Turing test. So we're not quite there yet. We're almost there. Those of us using ChatGPT and all of these products, but we're not quite there. 2029 is when this is predicted to happen. But I want you to imagine what happens beyond this point, because not only will it be abundantly clear that we're communicating with an artificial intelligence at 2029, it'll be indistinguishable. Beyond this point, it'll be very clear, because whatever it is we're speaking to will have an enormous amount of intelligence, way more than it'll be communicating with another human. They'll be able to summon the world's information at their fingertips. They'll be able to quote any expert. They'll be able to answer any question that you ask them instantaneously. So this is a form of super intelligence, and this is where it starts to get really exciting, perhaps scary for some people, but this is the trajectory that we're on at the moment. Now, if you think about how this technology will start to be adopted by society, we're starting to see this already, this generative AI wave that we're seeing at the moment. I had to use this image, by the way, of the co-pilot, if you've seen the film Airplane. This idea of these co-pilots, which are these software chatbots, if you like, embedded within applications. We're seeing this at the moment from Google, Microsoft within their productivity suites. Our partner Salesforce are using it to help people use their CRM platforms. And I think very quickly these are going to become table stakes for any organization. Your employees, your colleagues, your new starters will be demanding access to these co-pilots in order to allow them to do their best work, to achieve their most productive state. So I think that this is going to happen very quickly. But it's beyond this, as we look over the next 5 years, that it starts to get really exciting. Today, obviously, computers are so fundamental to the way that we run our daily lives. We rely on them in our personal lives, we rely on them for our work lives. But the way that we engage with computers today, we're constantly switching between different applications. We go to our calendar, we might open a browser, we might manipulate some data in a spreadsheet or create a presentation. We're constantly switching between these different applications. And none of these applications really has any context around who we are or our preferences or what we like to do, our interests or our relationships. So therefore, they can't use this information to do things on our behalf. We carry the overhead of doing this, or maybe our partner or friend or spouse, or if we're lucky, we've got a personal assistant that does this for us. But in the next 5 years, this is going to change completely. We'll simply be able to tell our devices what it is we want them to do, using natural language, and they will be able to go and carry out this task on our behalf. And that will depend on how much information we want to share with them, or how much context we provide. Now, this type of software is called an agent, and these agents will be available pretty much to anyone with a computer and an internet connection in the next 5 years' time. So this is a really exciting development. So it's going to feel like we've got our own personal assistants that are there to help us throughout our daily lives. We'll interact with them in the same way that we interact with our friends and colleagues. We might speak to them on the phone, send them a message, send them an email. They'll have access to our calendar. We might send them a photograph. All of these things that we do with our friends and colleagues, we'll do with our agents. And really what we'll do is we will choose how and when to summon these agents, either to carry out a task for us or to at least give us some information to allow us to make a much better decision. So this is going to happen, I think within the next sort of 4 or 5 years or so. So one of the major benefits to society of this is likely to be around healthcare as a starter. So if you think about healthcare today, it's one of the biggest expenditures that either governments or individuals have. And this is only going to get worse as populations continue to age and as new and expensive treatments start to come online. The main role of AI today within healthcare is simply sort of transcribing notes from doctors and really helping them to be more productive. But in the future, these agents are going to help patients to get advice on how to deal with problems, maybe to triage issues and figure out whether they need to speak to a doctor or not. If we have a condition, they'll help us manage that condition, maybe make sure we're tracking our recovery. And I think they'll also help healthcare workers to be able to become more productive as well and help them to make better decisions. We're already taking the first steps towards this. If you think about it, we're covering ourselves in devices today that are measuring all kinds of aspects of how we move in our daily lives and our heart rates and how much we sleep and this type of thing. Today, all of this information is being collected by our smartphones, but it exists in a series of different data silos, really, on our phones. I don't know if you've had a look at your health app on your phone, but there's a ton of data that's being collected. It's just really hard to interpret. Even the best doctor or physician couldn't interpret this. But an AI will be able to. It'll be able to interpret all of this data and help make us decisions on, whether we're feeling okay, whether we have detections of a virus coming, maybe we're limping a bit and we need to, do some exercise or something like that. So this is a really exciting development that I think we're going to see over the coming years. The other area that I think is really exciting is education, and there's a lot of focus around how AI can, support all of us really to educate ourselves, but particularly children in schools. If I think about my daughter today and how she engages with her homework and her lessons in class, it's very different to what it was when I was at school. She has a laptop. Within that laptop, she gets all of her homework. She has a little video there if she gets stuck with a teacher explaining stuff to her. So it's a massive step forward from what it was before. But imagine if you take that to the next level, where the content can be tailored specifically to her learning needs as an individual, or she can ask questions of it as if it were a teacher when she's doing her homework. So there's lots of opportunity there. And it's going to be like having a personal tutor for each subject. And I don't think this will replace teachers, but it'll help teachers, do their best work, write lesson plans, and really focus on the things that matter. There's obviously a dark side to this technology as well, which lots of people are concerned about. You'll read lots of press at the moment about AI's ability to spread misinformation very quickly. And I think experts fear that 2024 could be the year that AI has a catastrophic impact on an election outcome. And that's particularly relevant this year because more people are voting in the world this year than any other year in human history. Some people estimate it's 3 to 4 billion people are going to go to vote this year. We've already had some elections. I think Belarus had an election, which arguably wasn't a particularly fair election. Russia has an election coming up quite soon. We've got big elections happening in the US, in the UK later this year. So it is a real concern. I think it is something that we need to be concerned about. And we've already seen this over in America with a robocall faking Joe Biden's voice, advising people to stay at home and not go out and vote. So this is a genuine concern. So I'm going to invite a special guest onto the stage now to join us to cast his opinion on some of these subjects. I think he's pretty well qualified to have an opinion on this. So could we invite our guest onto the stage, please? Okay. Mr. President, thank you very much for joining us today.
It's a pleasure to be here at Disrupt. The energy is contagious. What's on your mind today?
Thank you. I'd like to ask you some questions about artificial intelligence. First of all, what excites you the most about this technology?
The potential for AI to revolutionize healthcare and tackle big challenges like climate change is what excites me the most. AI has the power to transform our world for the better. What about you? What excites you the most about AI?
I'm really excited about the impact on education as well. What do you think about that?
I agree. AI has the potential to personalize education and make learning more accessible. It's an exciting prospect. Have you seen the latest developments in AI-powered education tools?
I have. They're really exciting. But what role do you think governments can play in regulating AI?
Regulation is crucial to ensure that AI is used responsibly and ethically. We need to strike a balance between fostering innovation and protecting people's rights. It's a complex issue, but an important one. What are your thoughts on AI regulation?
Well, I'm also interested in your thoughts on the impact that AI could have on customer service.
AI has the potential to transform customer service by providing faster, more personalized support. However, we need to ensure that it doesn't replace the human touch entirely. Finding that balance is key. Have you had any personal experiences with AI-powered customer service?
Yeah, I deal with it all the time, actually. So I've got one last question for you, Mr. President. What do you think about Real Madrid beating Manchester City last night, 5-4 on penalties?
I'm a fan of the beautiful game, but I didn't catch the match. Real Madrid has a strong team, and it sounds like it was a thrilling game. Did you watch it?
I listened to the last half an hour, and it was a thrilling game. Thank you very much for joining us here today, Mr. President.
You're welcome. It was a pleasure chatting with you. Enjoy the rest of the conference.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Mr. President. If we can come back to the slides, please, that would be great. So always a bit of a high-risk thing doing a live interview with an AI on stage, but that worked okay, thankfully. So we're going to talk about AI a lot more as the day goes on. But there's another area of technology that was announced last year, another launch of a product, which I think has the potential to really revolutionize the way that we interact with computers over the course of the coming decade. Last year, after much speculation, Apple launched their Vision Pro headset. And in true Apple style, I think we've seen AR and VR headsets before, but Apple, I think have a track record of entering markets at the right time and creating these breakthrough computing platforms. So I think this could be the technology that takes it to the mainstream. Now, I haven't tried this platform yet, but by all account, it offers some really mind-blowing experiences that I think point to the future of computing technology. Now, Apple branded this as a spatial computing device. So what do we mean by spatial computing? Well, first of all, spatial computing brings together technologies like augmented reality, which overlays digital information onto the real world, and it combines that with virtual reality, which creates these immersive worlds for us to put ourselves into, where we can't really see what's going on outside, but we're sort of in a virtual world. And what it does cleverly is blend these things together, so I can dial in and out of these virtual and augmented worlds as I want to. And it allows us to place 3D images and objects and screens around the world and creating a really immersive experience. And it does this by mapping out the world around us and understanding where we are, and then putting objects in our field of view. So we could be on a train, we could be in a plane, we could be working at home or in our offices sharing content with people. Doesn't matter where we are, the whole world around us can become a canvas for information, 3D objects, screens, that type of thing. So it's a really interesting and immersive technology that I think could have quite a profound impact in terms of the way that we interact with computers. You can see here someone rehearsing on a stage, a bit like I'm doing now. So, now, historically, the use cases for this technology have been focused around things like gaming, media consumption, that type of thing. And you can imagine, I was actually sitting on the flight over here yesterday and imagining what it must be like watching a film where I've got a headset right in front of me, but that could be replaced by an apparent 100-foot screen. So it must be an incredible experience watching a movie on these things. The other use case is gaming as well, which again, I think gaming could be incredibly immersive here, which kind of frightens me a little bit because I've got two teenage boys. They spend a lot of time playing games like Fortnite. Goodness knows what it's going to be like when they can be fully immersed in those games. But this is coming, so we need to be able to figure out how we deal with it. Where it gets really interesting, I think, is to start thinking of this not just as a gaming and a media consumption device, but how is it going to help us become more productive? If you see the example here, we're placing screens in our field of view. We know that having a larger canvas from which to consume information helps us to become more productive. So I think there's a good opportunity here for these to really help drive productivity for us as knowledge workers, potentially for people within our contact centres as well. So Sorry, just jump back. So the other potential use case here is around being more immersive with people. You know, we've gotten so used to using things like Zoom and Teams to engage with people, but we're speaking to each other through these tiny, small screens. Now, nothing replaces being there in person, but if we can, you know, place 3D images of people around, share content more immersively, it will no doubt create much better connections than we get with the way that we do it today with Teams and Zoom calls. So, are we all going to be wearing these face computers going forward? Right now, you wouldn't think so. They're very expensive. Very expensive. They look a bit weird. They're very heavy. They've got, you know, very short battery life. But going back to the start and putting on our exponential thinking about this is the worst that this device will ever be. As we think forward over the coming decades, they will get smaller. They will get cheaper. The battery will get better. They'll get, you know, the screens will get better quality. They'll shrink in cost. They'll shrink in size. And I think they'll probably get to the point where in the morning, you know, we'll pop them on like a pair of glasses, and if we choose to, we'll be able to have information, you know, overlaid on our world and played back to us, much in the way that we reach for our smartphones today. So I think this is a bit of a glimpse of where it's heading in the future. And remember, there was a time when putting headphones on looked a bit weird. Everyone thought that people looked strange wearing headphones, and we kind of got used to that. So what this points to is a world where over the next decade, the way that we interact with computers will start to change. Today, we're using these traditional user interfaces like, you know, mice and keyboards and scrolling through. But as we look forward, more and more, our interactions with computers will mirror the way that we interact with each other. So we'll use language, we'll use gestures, expressions on our face, we'll, you know, pick up on our gaze and where we're looking, and the computers will be able to respond to that. So just to finish up then, we've got this incredible technology at our fingertips today, but why isn't it making us more productive? If you look at, you know, productivity charts from all of the Western countries, really, this is an example here. Up until about the year 2007, 2008, productivity was growing, you know, in most Western countries, somewhere between 2% and 3% per year. But as soon as we got to 2008, we've pretty much plateaued. Productivity's hardly grown at all across most Western countries. So what's happening? Why is this happening? Nobody really knows. Nobody really can tell what's going on here. Some people think that we're just using this technology to avoid doing work. You know, we've got these smartphones, we've got social media. Are we just sitting there scrolling through, not doing anything, not being productive? Well, that may be the case. And interestingly, 2008 was the year just after the iPhone launched, and it was the year that social media, you know, really became mainstream. So there's probably a bit of a linkage there. But I think this is only part of the story. I think what we're actually seeing is what I call a kind of great reconfiguration of society. We're gearing ourselves up for this next wave of change that is underpinned by technology. And we've seen this before. This happened when we moved from the steam era into the electricity era. We had to reconfigure all of our factories to work and take advantage of this new technology, electricity. We saw the same with the internet. You know, really, if you think about it, it took us decades to really adopt the internet and start taking advantage of e-commerce, which is really starting to get traction in society now as a mainstream technology. And obviously the pandemic maybe had a bit of an impact on that. So I think we're in this reconfiguration stage at the moment. We're putting a lot of our time and effort into, you know, replacing our technologies. We're kind of investing lots of money moving to the cloud, but maybe we're not quite seeing the full benefits of that yet. We're struggling to balance office working and home working. We're throwing technology often at outdated processes, and certainly technology is outpacing our ability to keep up with it at the moment. But what is certain, though, is that this excitement that we're seeing around AI at the moment is real. AI has established itself as a general-purpose technology, and what we see with the general-purpose technologies that we've had in the past is that they have a really wide range of applications. They impact multiple bits of society, multiple industries. And you know, in the history of humanity, these general-purpose technology have typically delivered major leaps in innovation, but often it takes a while for society to rewire itself to take advantage of this. But AI is quite unique because We've never in the past had a general purpose technology that is pretty much instantly available to the entire 8 or so billion people across the world. Most previous general purpose technologies have required lots of investment of infrastructure to take advantage of, the railways, steam, they need to be built out, electricity, etc., power stations, they needed to be built out. So I think this AI revolution is going to really supercharge the pace of change in society, and we're going to see a rapid wave of innovation over the coming decade as this really beds itself in as a technology. So thinking back to our Bill Gates, thinking back to overestimating the impact for the next 2 years and underestimating over the next 10 years, I think we have placed a lot of expectation around generative AI, ChatGPT at the moment. It is delivering value, but there's so much excitement around it. We probably will go through that slight trough of disillusionment before the technology really beds itself in and becomes something that we all use on a day-to-day basis, much like we do with Google and the internet today. So I hope, though, that over the next 10 years, these technologies, much like the iPhone, will surprise us and will delight us. And hopefully that'll happen in ways that we just can't imagine today. So all we can do is prepare ourselves for this change. We need to make sure that we're experimenting. We need to make sure that we're thinking about our data and that that's in order. We need to make sure we're preparing our friends and our colleagues, and that our processes are flexible to be able to adopt to this change as it happens. But one thing is for sure, that it's the countries and the companies and the individuals that are best able to do this are the ones that are going to thrive in the coming decade. So thank you very much, and I look forward to meeting hopefully many of you as the day progresses. Thank you.